Hi, everybody. We hope you're doing well. We're going to continue to look at this section in the Sermon on the Mount about prayer, but Jesus also deals with fasting. And oftentimes in the Bible, two things that are paired together are prayer and fasting. They don't have to always happen together, but there seems to be a unique combination and a unique power in prayer when fasting is added. I don't know what your experience is in fasting. In some health food or nutrition circles today, intermittent fasting is a big deal. Some cultures in the world and some religions in the world incorporate fasting as a regular aspect of their lives. But most people in America don't fast unless they have to, right? Unless you have that blood test that you have to go to tomorrow, so you have to fast. Why would you fast? I like eating, I like drinking, I like food, I like in and out, right? I like double doubles, right? Like there's so much that I like that tastes so good when I eat it, and when I don't eat, I'm hungry. And when I don't eat and I'm hungry, I get hungry, right? And so sometimes we get moody when we don't eat. So why would you put yourself purposely through skipping a meal? Why would you put yourself through purposely skipping a day of eating, a week of eating, some people even a month of eating? Why would you do that? It makes no sense at all. But there's another side to life. Keep in mind, there is this unseen spiritual world that we don't really see, even though we are a part of it. And Jesus understands that. He also understands that there's two different sides of fasting. But as I read, I'll help explain the context really quick, and then we'll look at those two sides. Jesus said this in Matthew chapter 6, starting in verse 16. When you fast, don't look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show that they are fasting. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so it will not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. So see, back in that time, there were certain things that people would do, certain things they would wear on their body, certain bells or certain aspects of their clothing that would make it very obvious that they were doing some religious ritual. So that would be a sign of honor. You would almost look at that person, you would go, wow, look how faithful they are. Wow, look how devout they are. And fasting was one of those aspects. So what people would do who were not fasting for the right reasons is they would look like they're fasting. They would look like they were hungry. They would look like they're hangry. They would look like they're moody. It was tough. It's tough fasting, and it is sometimes. But they would let you know it by the way they looked. And you would look over and you go, wow, look at her. She must be fasting. How devout she is. And Jesus said that's not the purpose of fasting. You are actually being hypocritical when you do that. And you receive your reward in full, which basically means you receive the praise of people. So you're being praised for your fasting just by the wrong person or by the wrong people. What Jesus really wants, and he realizes will happen, is that God will see when you're fasting as much as you can. You don't want to make a public spectacle of your fasting. You want it to be a private thing. You want it to be between you and God who sees what is done in secret will reward you. And we don't know what that reward is, but it probably ties to the two reasons that we typically would fast. One has to do with intimacy with God. It has to do with the willingness of giving up so that we could gain God more. For example, I love food. My favorite meal of the day is breakfast. I love breakfast foods. I love big old plates of hash browns and sausage and eggs. French toast. I just love breakfast. And so the question comes is, would I be willing to skip breakfast one day and just pray more? Would I be willing to say, God, I love you more than I love breakfast. I love you more than I love boba. I love you more than I love Instagram. And I would actually be willing to fast or give these things up, to step away from them for a season or for a spell or for a long time, maybe depending upon what it is. And so part of it has to do with prioritizing our relationship and our love for God above something else. I'm not saying that thing is necessarily bad, but maybe we realize that thing has gotten too much of a hold on us, especially social media. I mean, it would be so important for some people to fast from social media because the influence in social media has actually become a stronger influence in someone's life than God. So if that is the greater influence, why not cut it out and let God come in more so that God could be a stronger influence? So there's this idea of leaning on God and praying and building that intimacy and that relationship with God and being reminded that the love of God is more important than anything else. The love of God is more powerful than anything else, but the love of God is more life-giving than anything else, even than food. But the second is interesting. I think that we don't talk about this as much especially in Western culture, is that there's power behind fasting. I can't explain it all. I don't understand it all, but I do know that there are certain things that will only happen when you combine prayer and fasting. In Mark chapter 9, there's somebody who's struggling and the disciples are trying to help him and they can't. And then Jesus comes and he helps them. Boom, right? And they said, why couldn't we do these things? And Jesus said, this can only happen with prayer and fasting. And if we look at that example, we understand that there's certain things that cannot be changed simply by prayer alone. There's certain things that need to be changed by prayer and fasting, that somehow combining the two together somehow releases a spiritual power that's stronger than simply praying by itself. So if you're facing something that just seems to not have a breakthrough, you're not getting through, if there's something that's just not working out, but you feel like you're praying in the right direction, but it just keep hitting a roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. We've seen this with health situations. We've seen this with legal situations. We've seen this with relationships where you just feel like you're stuck. And you've been praying and you've been praying and you've been praying. The question really to ask yourself is, have you been praying and fasting? Because if you've been praying without fasting, fasting might be the key to break through. Now, I don't know how long you would fast for. I don't know how you would fast. That's something that you have to decide yourself. But on the one hand, fasting really develops that intimacy with God and helps reprioritize our life. So understand that true life comes from God, and we try to allow God to be the greatest voice and influence in our life. But the second is that there is power behind adding fasting to our prayers, not just fasting to lose weight, not just fasting because you have a blood test tomorrow, but honestly fasting because you say, God, this is how desperate I am. I'm willing to give up my food for the day. I'm willing to give up that thing I love, whatever it is, technology. I'm willing to give that up because I just want to pray and I want this thing to push through. Unless I'm going the wrong direction, then redirect me. Those things begin to happen when we add fasting to our prayers. I can't explain exactly the whole process behind it, but I can tell you that Jesus himself said certain things will only happen with fasting and prayer. So I want to encourage you, if you've never fasted, fast from something. If you don't know what to fast from, look at your life and say, what has the greatest control or power in my life besides God? And whatever that thing is, fast from that for a day or however long you can. If it's food, take a break from food. If it's social media, take a break from social media. If it's going out to eat, take a break from that. If it's actually certain relationships and you see that your love for those people is stronger than your love from God, take a break from those relationships and reprioritize things in life. At the same time, if you are praying and praying and praying, certain things are just not happening, fast. Fast about it. Fast often and fast regular, and add fasting to your prayer. And I am sure that you will begin to see more power in your prayer. Something happens when we combine prayer and fasting. That's why at this point in this message, in this Sermon on the Mount, Jesus didn't just talk about prayer, but he talked about the importance of prayer and fasting the right way, in secret between you and God, and he will reward you, is the promise. Try it out. I hope it goes well. God bless.